Elias Voss wasn't new to thievery. Calderas Prime was a place where the desperate took what they could, and the powerful made sure they stayed that way. But this time, the thief wasn't some grizzled scavenger or a gang rat looking for a quick score. This one was small, barely more than a shadow slipping through the crowded market. He caught a flash of movement at the edge of his vision. A hand, thin, trembling, darted into his supply crate and snatched a ration pack. Elias didn't hesitate. His fingers closed around the wrist, sharp bones beneath smooth, dust-covered skin. The thief flinched, eyes wide and panicked. A child. A Tarnai child. Elias had seen them before, the alien refugees that squatted on the outskirts, scraping by on scraps, hunted like vermin by corporate security. Most humans on Calderas Prime hated them. Saw them as the enemy, a stain left behind by the war. He'd fought in that war. He'd killed Tarnai soldiers. The boy thrashed, clawed at Elias's grip with sharp nails. Not an attack, just fear. Let go, the child hissed in broken standard. Elias loosened his hold just enough. The boy wrenched free and sprinted, slipping between bodies, a dart of dirty gray skin and ragged clothing. Damn it. Elias could have let it go. It was just a single ration pack. But something about the way the boy looked, too thin, too desperate, stuck with him. And so he moved. The market crowd swallowed him whole, but Elias was faster, stronger. He followed the boy down narrow alleys, across rusted catwalks hanging over the slums. The air here smelled of oil and decay, of too many bodies crammed into too little space. The boy darted through a torn sheet of fabric, vanishing into a derelict factory. Elias followed. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint hum of old machines long out of use. The boy was already disappearing into the maze of rusted beams and collapsed walls. Elias slowed, his boots crunching over debris. A whisper of breath. A shift of movement. He turned a corner and saw them. Not just the boy. A dozen of them. More. Alien refugees curled in the corners, their bodies skeletal beneath tattered clothes. And at the center, slumped against a broken console, was a woman. Her skin, same gray as the boy's, was dulled, her breathing shallow. Sweat beaded along her forehead, her body too still, too weak. The boy, Kale, the name came from somewhere in the murmurs, pressed the stolen ration pack into her hands. Her fingers barely closed around it. Elias exhaled, slow. He'd seen death before. Too much of it. Go away, Kale snarled at him. He stood between Elias and the woman, arms spread like he could shield her. Elias ignored the threat. He crouched, studying the woman's face. Sunken eyes. Starvation. Maybe worse. She's sick, Elias said. Not your business, the boy shot back. Elias looked around. The others weren't faring much better. The war had ended, but for them, it hadn't stopped. No medicine. No food. No help. The corporations wanted them gone but wouldn't say it out loud. They just made sure they died slowly instead. He exhaled through his nose. Walk away. It's not your problem. Except it was. Before he could say anything, the door behind him burst open. Voices. Boots. Corporate security. Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed Kale by the collar and pulled him down behind cover just as a squad of armored men strode inside. They weren't here to talk. Overseer Thane's men. Elias had seen their work before, clean-up crews with guns. They didn't ask questions. They didn't offer options. A voice barked through the factory. By order of Stellar Dynamics, all unauthorized personnel in this sector are subject to removal. Come forward now. Silence. Then the first shot rang out. The refugees scattered. Some tried to run, others huddled together. The soldiers moved forward, rifles up, advancing like they had all the time in the world. Elias swore under his breath. His sidearm was holstered, but there were too many of them. fighting wasn't an option. Not yet. He grabbed Cale, shoving him toward the woman. Can she walk? Cale hesitated, then shook his head. Elias's jaw tightened. He scanned the exits. Only one way out without getting shot. The boy was staring at him now, that same raw, desperate look in his two bright eyes. You're human. You don't help people like us. Elias growled under his breath. Move when I say. Don't stop. Cale swallowed, nodded. Elias reached for the nearest piece of scrap metal. A sharp whistle split the air. The guards turned toward the sound, just as Elias hurled the metal toward an overhead pipe. The clang echoed like a gunshot. Shouts. Elias grabbed Cale and the woman and ran. Behind them, the guards shouted orders, rifles swinging toward movement. Elias ducked low, weaving through the rusted remains of the factory, hauling the woman's weight as best he could. A shot grazed the wall beside him. They reached a maintenance tunnel, a narrow gap in the wall, just big enough to squeeze through. Elias shoved Cale inside, then pulled the woman through as more shots rang out behind them. Then they were in darkness. For a moment, only their ragged breathing filled the space. The tunnel stretched ahead, leading deeper into the ruins, away from the market, away from the guards. Safe. For now. Elias leaned against the wall, exhaling. Cale was still staring at him, confusion warring with suspicion. Finally, the boy spoke. Why? Elias met his gaze. Why? He didn't have an answer. But as he looked at the woman, barely clinging to life, at the others left behind, he knew he couldn't walk away. Not this time. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Elias Voss never made things easy for himself. The weight of the Tarnai woman, Saris, pressed against his side as he half-carried her through the pitch-black maintenance tunnel. Her breathing was weak, uneven. The stolen ration pack hadn't done much, it was medicine she needed, not just food. Behind them, Cale kept up, his small frame moving silently through the dark. He hadn't spoken since they escaped the factory. The kid didn't trust Elias, and honestly, Elias didn't blame him. The tunnel sloped downward, air growing thick with dampness. They needed to get out before they ran into something worse. Old tunnels like these were often home to more than just desperate refugees, gangs, rogue drones, or worse. Elias stopped at a junction where rusted pipes lined the walls. He let Saris rest against the metal while he pulled out his knife and scratched a small mark into the pipe, a habit from his military days, tracking his own movement. He turned to Cale. Where's the nearest safe spot? Cale hesitated, then pointed. Down. 2 levels. Any guards? Cale's gaze flicked to his mother before he answered. Not usually. Not usually. That wasn't good enough. Elias exhaled. All right. Stay close. They moved deeper, taking careful steps over broken grates and collapsed panels. The tunnel opened into a service corridor, barely lit by flickering emergency lights. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting in unnatural shapes. Then a noise. Footsteps. Elias yanked Cale and Saris into a recessed alcove just as 2 figures passed. Corporate security. Not Thane's men, these ones wore the gray and blue armor of Stellar Dynamics Patrol. They weren't as ruthless, but they wouldn't ask questions before opening fire either. One of them spoke into a comm. We've got reports of movement near the factory ruins. Orders? A garbled response crackled back. Understood. We'll sweep Sector 7. They moved on. Elias let out a slow breath. Too close. Cale shifted beside him. Why help us? His voice was barely above a whisper. Elias looked at him. The kid's eyes weren't just cautious, they were waiting for betrayal. He didn't answer. He didn't have one. Instead, he adjusted Saris's weight and kept moving. They reached an old mining shaft. The air smelled of metal and decay. Elias climbed down first, then reached up to pull Saris down carefully. Cale followed, landing lightly beside them. The space was cramped, an abandoned supply station, half collapsed. Rusted lockers lined the walls. An overturned desk sat in the corner, covered in dust. No signs of recent use. Elias set Saris down gently. She barely reacted. Her skin was too cold. Cale knelt beside her, gripping her hand. "She needs medicine," Elias muttered. Cale's expression darkened. "We don't have any." No surprise there. Corporations controlled everything on Calderis Prime, including medical supplies. Without credits or clearance, Saris wouldn't last the night. Elias checked his pockets. He had enough charge left in his ID chip for a purchase, but that would put a target on his back. "We need to get her to a medic." Cale's head snapped up. "No. They'll turn us in." Elias frowned. He wasn't wrong. Most med stations were corporate-run. Treating a Tarnai refugee? Not worth the risk. There was only one option. "We steal it." Cale blinked. "Steal?" Elias nodded. "A supply outpost 2 sectors away. They keep stocked medkits." Cale hesitated, then looked at Saris. His small fingers tightened around hers. Elias knelt. "I need your help." The boy stared at him. Then, slowly, he nodded. The plan. The supply outpost was lightly guarded. A storage facility, not a security checkpoint. They kept basic meds, rations, and spare parts. Elias had done a few jobs there before, he knew the weak spots. The problem? Surveillance. Even if they got inside, the cameras would flag them within seconds. "We disable them first," Elias said. Cale frowned. "How?" Elias pulled a small device from his belt. An old military signal disruptor, short range, temporary. Enough to black out security feeds for about 30 seconds. Cale's expression turned skeptical. 30 seconds? Elias smirked. Plenty of time. Cale looked unconvinced, but didn't argue. The heist. They moved fast. The outpost was small, just a 2-story storage building with a security station up front. Elias led Cale through the back alley, keeping low. The patrol routes were predictable. One guard outside. Another inside. No cameras on the loading dock. Elias signaled Cale. The boy crept forward, silent as a shadow, and slipped through the side entrance. Elias followed, pulling the disruptor from his belt. A small console blinked in the corner, security feed controls. Elias activated the device. The lights flickered, and the cameras went dark. "Move." They sprinted to the storage racks. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with supplies. Elias scanned the labels. Rations. Weapons. Medical. He grabbed a small case marked emergency med kit and shoved it into his pack. Cale pulled at his sleeve. "We need immunosuppressants. For her fever." "Damn." Elias scanned again. Found a sealed vial. Footsteps. The guard inside was coming back. Elias swore under his breath. They had seconds. Cale grabbed the vial. Elias pulled him toward the exit. Then the disruptor died. The cameras rebooted. Alarms shrieked through the building. "Run!" They sprinted for the alley. The outside guard turned, confusion flickering across his face. Then he saw them. "Stop!" Elias didn't. He drove his fist into the man's throat. The guard crumpled, choking. Cale darted past, clutching the stolen vial. More shouts. More guards. They hit the streets, weaving through alleys. The outpost alarms echoed behind them. Then, a spotlight blazed from above. A corporate drone ship hovered over the district, scanning. Searching. "Shit," Elias muttered. Cale tugged at him. "What now?" Elias exhaled. "Now we run like hell." They vanished into the night. Elias ran. The narrow alleys of Caldera's Prime twisted ahead, a labyrinth of rusted walls and forgotten infrastructure. Cale was right behind him, clutching the stolen medicine like his life depended on it, because it did. The hum of the corporate drone ship above sent a pulse of tension through Elias's body. If it locked on, there'd be no outrunning it. "We need cover," Elias muttered. Cale pointed toward a cluster of wrecked transport containers. Elias didn't question it. They veered left, slipping into the shadows as the drone's spotlight swept past, illuminating the dust-choked street. A voice crackled through the drone's speaker. "Fugitives detected. Surrender now. Not a chance." Elias pressed his back against the metal wall, listening. Heavy boots pounded the pavement nearby, security teams moving fast. They weren't taking any chances. Cale tugged at his sleeve, eyes darting to a sewer hatch a few feet away. Elias hesitated. Underground tunnels were dangerous, collapsing structures, rogue automatons, scavengers who'd kill for scraps. Then the drone's searchlight returned, hovering too close. No time. Elias pried open the hatch and dropped in first, landing on damp steel. He turned and caught Cale as the boy climbed down. The moment the hatch shut above them, darkness swallowed everything. The air was thick with the stench of rust and stagnant water. Pipes lined the walls, dripping with moisture. Faint echoes carried down the tunnels, sounds of shifting metal and distant movement. Cale gripped the medicine tight. "How do we get back?" Elias switched on his wrist light, sweeping it over the tunnel. "We follow the left path. Leads back near the old supply station." Cale didn't question him. They moved fast, boots splashing through shallow water. The tunnels stretched endlessly, intersecting at odd angles. A remnant of Caldera's Prime's early construction, abandoned once the corporate districts went up. Then, voices. Elias stopped. Ahead, dim lights flickered. Figures moved, 5, maybe 6. Not corporate security. Their armor was mismatched, weapons jury-rigged. Scavs. Elias cursed under his breath. Scavengers ruled the underground. They had no allegiance, no morals, just hunger. And they were blocking the only safe way out. Cale edged closer. "What now?" Elias weighed his options. Fight? Too risky. Sneak past? Impossible. Then he noticed the pressure valve on a corroded pipe nearby. An idea. "Stay behind me." Cale obeyed as Elias moved forward, stepping into the dim light. The scavengers turned. Their leader, a bald, scarred man with cybernetic eyes, grinned. Well, he drawled. "What do we have here?" Elias didn't answer. He reached out casually, fingers brushing the pressure valve. "Easy, friend," the scavenger said. "We don't need trouble. But, you look like you've got something valuable." His gaze flicked to Cale, then to the stolen medical case. Elias tightened his grip on the valve. "Walk away." The scavenger chuckled. "See, that's not how this works. You're in our territory now." Elias twisted the valve. Steam exploded from the pipe, scalding hot, filling the tunnel in a blinding cloud. The scavengers shouted, stumbling backward. "Move!" Elias grabbed Cale's arm and sprinted. The steam gave them a few seconds head start, but the scavs wouldn't give up that easily. Boots pounded behind them, voices yelling. Elias spotted an old maintenance ladder leading to the surface. He shoved Cale up first, then followed. The moment his feet hit solid ground, he slammed the hatch shut. No time to breathe. They had to keep moving. They reached the hideout minutes later. The air was thick with exhaustion, but there was no time to rest. Saris was still slumped against the wall, her breathing shallower than before. Elias didn't waste a second. He cracked open the med kit, pulling out the injector. Cale hovered beside him. "Will it work?" Elias placed the injector against Saris's neck and pressed. A faint hiss as the medicine entered her bloodstream. Seconds passed. Then, slowly, her breathing evened out. The feverish sweat on her skin began to fade. Kale clutched her hand. "Mom?" Her eyes fluttered open. Confusion, then recognition. Weak fingers brushed against Kale's. A breathless whisper. "You're safe." The boy nodded, blinking fast. Elias sat back, exhaling. "She'll need time, but she'll live." Kale turned to him, something unreadable in his expression. "You didn't have to do this." Elias met his gaze. "Yeah. I did." A moment of silence. Then Kale nodded. "Just once." The aftermath. Elias knew this wasn't over. He'd stolen from Stellar Dynamics. They wouldn't let it slide. Thane wouldn't let it slide. Sure enough, the news feeds lit up within hours. Security alert, fugitive interference in corporate operations. Suspect at large. Elias read the report from his stolen datapad. They hadn't identified him yet, but they would. He had two choices: leave Calderas Prime and never look back, or finish what he started. The refugees in the slums weren't just suffering. They were dying. And no one cared. Elias wasn't a hero. He wasn't a leader. But maybe, just maybe, it was time someone fought back. He shut off the datapad. Then he looked at Kale, at Saris. The boy studied him, cautious but no longer afraid. "What now?" Elias flexed his fingers. He already knew the answer. "Now?" He stood. "We start a war." Elias Voss had made a choice. There was no going back. He stood in the dim light of the hideout, watching Saris rest. Her breathing was steady now, color slowly returning to her skin. Kale hadn't left her side, his small hand wrapped around hers, as if afraid she'd vanish if he let go. Elias had seen people survive before. He'd seen them fight to live, only to be crushed under the heel of something bigger. This time, he wasn't going to let that happen. Kale looked up. "You really want to fight them?" Elias met his gaze. "I don't see any other way." The boy hesitated. "They'll kill you." Elias smirked, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe. But they're already killing you." Kale said nothing, but his fingers curled into a fist. Elias checked the data pad again. Thane's security forces had locked down the entire sector. Patrols were doubling, drones scanning the alleys. The crackdown had begun. He turned to Kale. "I need to find someone." The boy's brow furrowed. "Who?" "A man named Rannick." Kale's expression shifted. He knew the name. Rannick was a ghost, a figure spoken about in whispers, one of the last surviving Tarnai resistance leaders from the war. Some said he had fled. Others believed he had died fighting. But Elias had heard rumors. He was still here, hiding in the ruins of the lower reaches. And if there was any hope of turning the tide, Elias needed him. The descent into the reaches. The lower reaches weren't a place anyone entered lightly. It was a graveyard of industry, factories abandoned mid-construction, tunnels leading to nowhere, entire districts left to rot when corporate expansion moved elsewhere. No law. No safety. Just shadows and secrets. Elias kept his sidearm ready as he moved through the wreckage. Kale followed close behind. The boy hadn't wanted to be left behind, not after everything. Why would Rannick help? Kale asked. Elias stepped over a broken pipe. Because he hates Stellar Dynamics as much as you do. And if he's dead? Elias didn't answer. They reached the entrance to an old power station, half buried under collapsed buildings. Elias scanned the area. No movement. No sound but the distant hum of the city above. He knocked twice on a rusted metal door. Then twice more. A pause. Then, from within, a voice. Low, rough. Who the hell are you? Elias tensed. Voss. I'm looking for Rannick. Silence. Then the door creaked open just enough to reveal a pair of golden, slit-pupil eyes, Tarnai eyes. A woman. Older. Scarred. She studied him with sharp calculation. "You don't belong here." Elias met her gaze. "I didn't belong in the war either, but I fought in it." A flicker of recognition. Not trust. But something close. The woman stepped back. Inside. Now. A reluctant ally. The room was dim, filled with scattered crates, makeshift cots, and the smell of burnt wiring. More Tarnai figures moved in the shadows, eyes wary. Survivors. Fighters. At the center, a man sat at an old terminal. His presence was unmistakable. Rannick. His skin was lined with age, shoulders weighed with the burden of too many lost battles. But his eyes, those burned with something else. Recognition flickered across his face. "Voss." Elias inclined his head. "You know me?" "I know your type," Rannick said. "Ex-soldier, tired of running, thinks he can fix what's broken." He leaned back. "What do you want?" Elias didn't waste time. "A war." The room went silent. Then Rannick laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "You're out of your mind." Elias folded his arms. "Probably." Rannick studied him. "Even if I believed you, even if I thought you had the firepower, the manpower, how exactly do you plan on fighting a corporate army?" Elias tossed a data chip onto the table. "That's how." Rannick's eyes narrowed. He plugged the chip into the terminal. A holographic display flickered to life. Blueprints. Weak points. Patrol schedules. Everything Elias had gathered from his time smuggling and watching stellar dynamics. Rannick leaned forward. "Where did you get this?" Elias smirked. "Let's just say I pay attention." The older man was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "More dangerous." "You're serious?" Elias nodded. Rannick exhaled through his nose. Then he turned to the others. "Wake everyone. We have work to do." The first strike. The plan was simple. Test their defenses. See how far they could push. A supply convoy was scheduled to move through the southern district in 3 hours, carrying food, weapons, and fuel. If they could take it, they'd have their first real foothold. Elias checked his weapon. 1 shot. Make it count. Rannick and his people moved fast, setting up makeshift barricades, rerouting old maintenance panels to control the streets. They didn't have corporate-grade firepower. But they had numbers. And they had nothing to lose. The convoy approached. Elias crouched behind cover, gripping his rifle. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. The lead vehicle rolled into the intersection. Right where they wanted it. Then Rannick gave the signal. A detonation rocked the street, not enough to destroy, just to stop. Guards scrambled, weapons raised. They didn't see the attack coming. Elias moved first, taking down the nearest soldier before he could react. The others followed, gunfire cracking through the night. Within minutes, it was over. The convoy was theirs. The first real victory. Rannick stepped beside Elias, watching as their people secured the supplies. "You got what you wanted." Elias exhaled. "Not yet. But it's a start." Rannick nodded. "Then let's give them hell." Elias looked toward the city skyline, where Stellar Dynamics headquarters loomed in the distance. This was only the beginning. The rebellion had begun.